Good evening everyone and welcome to our Junior Cycle Modern Foreign Languages webinar event. On our team tonight we have Amanda, Eileen, Libby and Cleona, and we are joined by almost 400 teachers. We are delighted that you could join us. We hope that you benefit from your participation in tonight's webinar. Tonight's event will focus on working with learning outcomes. To begin with, we'd like to bring your attention to the Questions tab on the right-hand side of your screen. In a bid to make tonight's webinar as collaborative and interactive as possible, we will pause at various times throughout the presentation to discuss and to answer questions. Please feel free to pose questions in the Questions tab on the right-hand side of the screen. We will endeavour to answer as many questions as possible tonight. However, due to the huge volume of questions, we might not get all questions answered this evening, but we will do in due course. Another key feature of support for this webinar is the Handouts section, which is available in the Handouts tab to the right of your screen. This may be useful to you during our presentation. There are 5 handouts available for tonight. This webinar will be recorded along with questions, and these will be made available on jct.ie after tonight's event. As we work through the specification, access to the Learning Outcomes poster would be beneficial during the webinar. This is available to download at jct.ie. If you do not have one to hand, there is one available to you in the Handouts tab. Let us begin with our learning intentions for this webinar. We aim to develop our understanding of the rationale behind moving towards a learning outcomes approach to teaching, assessment and learning in the modern foreign languages classroom. We hope to further examine the learning outcomes of our modern foreign languages specification. These 39 learning outcomes form the core of our new specification, so we are going to explore what the potential learning is in a selection of learning outcomes to model the process of unpacking learning outcomes. Finally, we will work through the process of selecting learning outcomes to create a unit of learning for first-year students in the modern foreign languages classroom. Essentially, tonight we hope to examine the what, the why, and the how of learning outcomes. Let's check in. We'd like to find out how many of you have attended CPD for Modern Foreign Languages with Junior Cycle for Teachers. Please click on the Polls tab on the right-hand side of your screen. Thank you. Now let's revisit the definition of a learning outcome. This quotation is taken from the Specification for Modern Languages on page 15. I will give you a moment to read the definition of learning outcomes. Learning outcomes are to be developed over the 3 years of junior cycle and, therefore, a learning outcome focused on at a particular point in first year will be revisited again and again as it continues to support the students' learning of modern foreign languages up to the end of junior cycle. The main change for us as teachers of modern foreign languages is the move from a syllabus with a strong focus on content to a learning outcomes-based specification. So why a learning outcomes approach? By using a specification which outlines what students should be able to do, we are developing skills and values in addition to knowledge and understanding. Learning outcomes are written with the student in mind. They allow for differentiated teaching. They are unconstrained and, as such, enable all students to access the learning and also to achieve to their potential. Learning outcomes are not treated in isolation, but instead are integrated across the 3 strands. Students' learning experience will be richer and their engagement will be optimised as we integrate the three strands of communicative competence, language awareness, and socio-cultural knowledge and intercultural awareness. When students communicate and interact for meaning in contexts that are relevant to them at their age and stage, they become more engaged in the language learning process, which motivates them to learn. Let's now have a look at each of the three strands separately. Strand 1, communicative competence. I'll give you a moment to read the slide. As you can see, speaking has been separated into two skills: spoken production and spoken interaction. Therefore, we now have 5 communicative skills. Strand 2, language awareness. Again, I'll pause and give you a moment to read the slide. Here you will notice that there are 3 main elements in this strand: understanding how the target language works, identifying and comparing language patterns of the target language to the student's language, and finally, reflecting. Learning to reflect is an important skill that will need to be developed with our students so that they can become more autonomous in language learning. They can set their own goals. Finally, we have strand 3, socio-cultural knowledge and intercultural awareness. Again, I'll pause and allow you a moment to read this slide. In this strand, you will notice that there are 3 elements. 2 of these elements focus on the target language country or country's culture. But it is worth noting that the last element of this strand is about making connections between the target language country or country's culture and the student's own culture. There is also an emphasis on learning to appreciate their own culture. To summarise the structure of the Modern Foreign Languages Specification for Junior Cycle, there are 3 strands, 11 elements which sit within these 3 strands, with 5 elements in strand 1, 3 elements in strand 2, and a further 3 elements in strand 3, and a total of 39 learning outcomes, which all sit within their associated element. In summary, we have 3 strands, 11 elements, and 39 learning outcomes.